All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we have a very special guest. She is a licensed counselor, certified birth and postpartum doula, a certified lactation counselor, and an author. So today we have Irene Kim, and we are so excited to talk about the intersection of mental health and birth work. And yeah, let's get into it. Thanks for joining us, Irene.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thank you.
So, how did you get into the mental health and the birth work space? What's the story there?
So, actually, before I went into the birth work, my background was originally in mental health. So, I think just from when I was very young, I've always been very amazed at the human capacity to navigate really hard things. And we all know the world that we live in brings us plenty of hard things. And so, starting at a very young age, I found myself in contact with tons of people who would just open up about their deepest struggles. And I saw firsthand basically how transformative it can be to have someone there to just truly listen, someone who could hold space for the messy parts and just be there without judgment or trying to rush toward a solution or have an ulterior agenda or anything like that. And so I think it taught me that while we can't control the things that happen to us, having a witness to our journey, in a sense, especially like a purely non-judgmental, safe, and grounded third person can fundamentally change the way we heal and navigate through our journey. So I wanted to be that person and do it for a living. And so I wanted to get the tools and the foundation to do it. So I began my professional path in mental health at Johns Hopkins and got my master's there, got my license. But as life often does, took a very long, beautiful detour. And I stepped away for a little over a decade just to homeschool my three kids that I had. I started birth doula work then as I kind of changed as a person, as a mom. But, as I went through that life doing, homeschooling, we also did foster care during that time. I really was a witness to life's like most raw, hard, and even like miraculous transitions. And I don't think I realized then how much that foundation was kind of preparing me for just this work that I would do. I would say until kind of more recently when I had my own very difficult season. And just a few years ago, I survived like a very brutal assault. And it was in the aftermath of that trauma that I found myself on the other side of the therapeutic relationship, received intensive trauma therapy. And that experience was a huge awakening for me. It proved and reminded me that while we are resilient, there is a level of healing that, really simply isn't, I don't want to say isn't possible, but it's really hard alone without that professional grounded support of a trained and licensed therapist. And so, yeah, it was that firsthand experience. I think that kind of to reinstate, led me back to reinstate my license and return to this work more full time.
Yeah, it's funny how like life just always seems to throw something at you. And I feel like
Mhm.
people that have a big career shift or like add this huge new layer to their business or their career, like it's always
Yeah.
because they went through something very important that kind of led them in that direction.
Right. Very unexpectedly, but kind of just beautifully comes together. And so I'm actually so thankful for all the pieces of it, as difficult and as messy as things were. Yeah, because it kind of led me to where I am now.
Yeah. So you're both a birth doula and a postpartum doula, what is kind of like the difference between those two things? What is your role in each one of those?
Yeah. So a birth doula mostly helps. I would say the main focus is during the actual birth, right? Like labor and delivery, but that support begins in pregnancy. And so obviously you're hired during the pregnancy period before birth. And so during that period, we provide support just educationally and also just to be kind of on call, kind of talk you through to how to prepare for birth. And then obviously the bulk of the support for a birth doula is when you go into labor and that really physical hands-on support in the birth room to help, coach and support and guide you through labor and delivery right until baby's born. And yeah, usually with the birth doula support, we kind of end right around there. We do like one postpartum visit, but that's about it. As a postpartum doula, we focus on the after part, right? And they're very connected. So I think it's actually very beneficial if you have a doula who is trained in both because it impacts, the other obviously. And so a postpartum doula comes to help after the baby's born, usually at your home. And it could be a few days a week, few nights to help with anything from, just newborn basics, letting you know what's normal, giving you a hand so you can sleep, help with nursing, just kind of being an emotional support as well to talk through things, even like processing the birth and things like that.
Yeah. Man, I would have loved to have a postpartum doula. That would have been great. So
I
I
know.
have one daughter. She's almost 2. But so I ended up having to have a C-section. She had to come a little early, so I had like an early scheduled C-section. Can a birth doula
Yeah.
be helpful with that too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's, kind of one of those things you never know what the birth outcome is going to be,
Yeah.
right? And how that's going to go. And so, for sure, a doula can help with the C section. I usually say it's like in my contract too, because, we have to try to like account for these possibilities. If it's like a scheduled C section, like something happens during your pregnancy and you have to go in for a scheduled C section at some point and you've already contracted with me, then I usually offer some postpartum support in lieu of that birth support, just because usually with a C section, only one person can go back. And a lot of times that's like the partner that will go back. Of course, if they want me to, then I totally will. Right. But yeah, I will help obviously all the things leading up to the C section, mentally preparing you, kind of telling you what to expect, telling you also what options you have, what rights you have, even in
Yeah.
that operating room and kind of what recovery will be like and things like that. And usually I'll join in the recovery part of it for sure and meet them back there and kind of help them transition out.
Hmm. Yeah. Now that would have been, I would have loved to have that. So we live in Arkansas and like access to doulas or midwives and all that is kind of limited. You can definitely
Mhm.
find them just in
Yeah.
our area. I looked into it. I was like, man, there are not a lot of options. I think that's, yeah, it's just such important work.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, when I became a doula, actually before I became a doula, when I was pregnant with my first, I didn't even know what a doula was.
Hmm.
Like I was like, doula. I was like, is that like a midwife or like what is that? And I had taken this birth class, and my instructor at the end of it, she was like, do you think I could join you for your birth as your doula? Like, I haven't been to a birth in a while. I would love to just get my toes wet again. And I was like, sure. And so she came and she was seriously like an angel, like for me in that birth room, like one that I never knew I needed. And oh my gosh, it just made a world of a difference. And so after that, I was like, doula, 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 doula to everyone. And I went into my own training because I was just already helping so many people at that point because no one knew what it was, at least not in my community. And they were having births that were ending in like trauma and even a lot of like physical injury just because they didn't know the risks going into it that can come with birth and they weren't prepared or supported. And so I quickly kind of became that person and, got my certification after that. And yeah,
That's
we
really
need
neat.
more.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I'd imagine everyone would benefit from having a doula, but if someone's trying to decide whether or not, if they're like, I'm not sure that this would help me, do you feel like there are certain gaps that doulas fill or certain people that benefit more from having a doula?
Oh man, I think everyone should have a doula. I think it should be built into the medical system. It's not. It's slowly, being covered with some insurances, but really it's mostly out of pocket. And so it's almost become like just this like luxury, right? Because it's not cheap and yet it's so needed and it totally shifts, birth outcomes to really more positive, healthy births, healthier moms, healthier babies, right? And that's the ultimate goal. And so I feel like it's such a necessity. I think everyone should have one. I think the people who hire me, like, it's like mom knows they need me, but dads are like, please be there, like help us. And then, if they have you for one, they have you for all of them because they just see like it's just like what would birth be without like that kind of support? Like otherwise you're kind of largely on your own in that birth room.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also like obviously it's great to have your partner there, but if your partner is a male, there's also no way that they can possibly understand what that feels like. And so if you've got a female doula, because most doulas are women,
Yeah.
then I think they can just understand that so much more and support you in a different way than your partner can. And also, your partner's entire world is about to change with a new baby. And so, yeah, you can be that like one calm, grounded person in the room.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
support them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I don't want to say more than the moms who are birthing, but the partners are like so grateful for the support because they want to help the mom, but a lot of times they don't know how to. And that can feel so scary and, powerless. You feel out of control and this huge thing is happening and you don't know how to help this woman who is going through like probably one of the hardest things in her life. And so that can feel really scary without a person to help, join the team and kind of even show the partner, like, this is what you can do. Like, this is what you bring to the table that I can't even bring to the table. Right. And here's what we can do together to help this new mama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very cool.
So, how in your practice now, I know obviously being a doula, you're obviously doing a lot of things that like have to do with mental health because you want the mom to be in a good space, but in what other ways have you kind of integrated mental health and birth work?
So I will say, obviously, even before I reinstated my license and I was just doing birth work, I already at that point had the mental health background, right? Because I'd already had my license before, gone to school for it, and all of that. And so it was very interesting to see just how psychological birth is. And in my support as a doula, I was largely doing a lot of therapy work, I felt like kind of unofficially.
Okay.
And, talking parents through those prenatal appointments, talking with them about just the fears that are like lingering in their mind, through the week that is impacting their pregnancy, right? Talking to women about loss and what that brings to the table when you're trying to birth, right? All these things just as a doula, I feel like we're already there. Now, when I shifted to therapy work as more as my full time, a lot of the clients that I work with are women or, families who are in that perinatal period, like women who are pregnant or women who just had a baby, couples who come to me for couple therapy who just had a baby, right? And they come for therapy, like official therapy sessions. And so I kind of do both in both spheres, right? Obviously more proactively in the therapy session, but yeah, definitely, just that whole period of transitioning into parenthood, you carry such an unspoken weight during that transition. And there's actually a specific word for this transition that we don't really hear about, but it's like matrescence. It's like adolescence, except
Yeah.
it's like not a child becoming a teenager, which is often very messy, developmentally uncomfortable. We know, like, oh my gosh, the teenage angst, like we know and expect it to be hard, right? Adolescence. But we don't always talk about how hard that shift is to becoming a mom, right? And that transformation that involves kind of like a total restructuring of your brain, your hormones, your identity. And, we don't expect a mom to be like all messy. We almost expect her to be like instantly happy. And so, put together with her new happy little family, right? But it is a very, very huge transition, a transformation that is often very difficult. And so when you carry this unspoken weight, I think a lot of my clients who come to me come because they have really high level anxiety.
Yeah.
They have intrusive thought, right? Scary ones about maybe even like harm coming to the baby, harm to self, and this deep sense of like identity lost. And, they're almost mourning at times like the person they were before. And with all of these struggles, it often leads to relationship issues and tensions in the family. And so everyone's really struggling as they try to navigate this very new and foreign landscape. And so when you have that added pressure of like, oh, I'm supposed to be really happy, because of this, toxic byproduct of a culture that kind of romanticizes, right?
Yeah.
And glamorizes parenthood while ignoring the reality of the work and difficulty that comes with parenthood. And so we work a lot on pulling back that layer of guilt. We work on boundary setting, managing expectations, but mostly just normalizing just this entire spectrum of emotions and experiences, which are the reality of postpartum shifts.
Yeah. How long do you think that like period takes, the adjustment period takes?
Mhm.
Because I've talked to friends who've had kids, or I see people on social media that
Yeah.
some of them, make it seem like, oh, everything is great. This is so wonderful. And maybe it is. But the ones who talk about how difficult it actually is, sometimes, they have a kid that's 2 or 3 and they feel like they're still struggling with their identity and all of the changes. How long does that adjustment take for people, do you think? Or do you think it ever stops being an adjustment?
I know, right? Because when do we ever stop changing too? Like, like I feel like every new season as your child grows, like you are changing too, right? And I think sometimes the struggle part of it lasts longer if we keep trying to fit into some mold that we think we should be in. Like, oh, I should even be better now. I should be okay by now. Like, even that idea. And what does that even look like? Like, what does being okay look like right now? I think because life looks so different from before, where before kids, like I could clean up my house and it'll stay clean for a bit.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to the grocery store, I just need to put on my shoes and grab my purse. With kids, it's like a tornado went through your house constantly. There is very little period of peace, if ever. And so what doing well looks like right now, like even what a sound household looks like right now looks so different from before. And I think the more we can almost accept that change and find a new normal, find a new okay during this recognized season of life, I think helps us to be back to okay, like at least having a sense of peace about it, even if it is crazy, because it is going to be crazy. There's no fighting that, like for a really long time, like my kids now are 14, 12, and 10. And I am here to tell all the parents who have toddlers that it does get a little bit more peaceful for sure.
Yeah.
Like my house is clean and my kids can help me, and they're required to actually and held responsible for lots of things because they're older, right? And it's definitely a different season. I mean, we struggle with other things now, right, that we have to navigate. But, I would say in that very early stages where you have a brand new infant, like newborn baby, so hard. When you have toddlers now in the mix, perhaps with another newborn baby, so hard. It is so, so, so hard, not only mentally, but physically, you're exhausted just on every single front, right? It is like you've been put into like, the most intense, like reality show, like where everything is just thrown at you at once and you just have to like survive, right? Recognize that it's hard and just have a lot of compassion and grace for yourself and what that can look like, and it'd be okay.
Yeah. I think that's something lots of new moms especially need to hear, and if it's their first kid or like, yeah, I've got an almost 2-year-old, and if I had a newborn right now, I can't even imagine because right now my toddler is into everything. She destroys the entire bathroom every
Yeah.
morning while we're getting ready, and
Right.
every day we pick it up. And so with a newborn, yeah, that would be really difficult. So I think a lot of new moms need to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like as you kind of struggle through it, it's like, I think a lot of the work is understanding and creating a space where you can have like dual truths, right? Where we can make room for feeling really happy with where I am, but also feeling like you hate it, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to say, like, I hate this because it makes you sound like a bad mom. But who would like someone messing up everything you do every second? Who would like getting food thrown at your face or you cooking a whole meal that took you 2 hours and no one wants to eat it? Like who
Hmm.
would like that? Like to be able to say, this really sucks. Like, I hate this. This is the worst. This is
Yeah.
like really killing me right now. There's like a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah. Because you really can
Hmm.
hate that your kids messed everything up and didn't eat what you made them, but you can also still love them so much.
Yeah.
So, and the last therapist we had on the podcast also it said something very similar. Totally different topic, but how like two things can be true at
Yeah.
once.
Yes. Absolutely. All of life, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I would also like to talk about, you mentioned that you're mentoring other birth workers and teaching people to do what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And recently I've been developing what I call like the Kindle Doula Academy. That's the name of it. My business is Kindle Doula Life. So basically, I am developing a program to mentor and train and certify doulas. I specifically wanted to do this because I come at it with a framework carrying both like the mental health aspect of it as well as the whole, doula side. And so my mission is to basically train a new generation of birth workers who are truly mental health conscious for others and for themselves. And right now, I know there is a huge gap in that traditional training method. And so it's one thing to know how to suggest the labor position or like offer a cool cloth, do the position changes and things like that, but also to entirely understand like the nervous system in real time, right? And what's happening there. And so we're teaching birth workers how to recognize like psychological signs of a trauma response, how to hold space for clients with really big emotions or great loss in a way that is both, deeply supportive and still like professionally sound. And so, yeah, a major part of this mentorship is teaching that delicate balance of being an emotional anchor without, forgetting all the great professional boundaries and things we need to do as we work in like the medical space, right? And so, yeah, I'm very excited. My specific program is actually calling out more Asian women. It's
Awesome.
very, very rare to see a Asian doula. In fact, like in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, I'm the only one.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I first started, I was the only one. I think I heard somewhere in Virginia there's one other one, but largely it's just very lacking in the Asian community. And so when the Asian community in this area have babies, they almost all come to me, right? And
Yeah.
then obviously other non-Asian families as well. But I saw this need. And so I'm really calling out more Asian women and to use like our roots, which I believe has really prepared me to be the type of doula that I am. And so I want to kind of, foster more of that in the birth world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. How do you work or do you work differently with women who have experienced pregnancy loss or infertility? Is there any sort of different approach with those women?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Working with clients who have walked the path of anything from fertility challenges or pregnancy loss or just child loss, right, requires a very specific deeply trauma-informed lens. And my perspective on this is shaped, not just by my own like clinical training, but, in my many years as a doula, I unfortunately have walked alongside several clients who have experienced a lot of perinatal loss. And so I've been in the room during those moments, and I know firsthand how devastating that is, and then how devastating and hard it is to move forward and try to even have another child to grow their family, right? It becomes very difficult. And I think when that is there is this unspoken, again, kind of silence and heaviness that happens in those spaces that these families carry. And so for these parents, a current or future pregnancy isn't just a time of joy, right? It's very complex. It's high stakes emotional landscape that you're navigating. And there's this often like unshakable hypervigilance, right? That is exhausting. And this psychological feeling of almost like waiting for the shoe to drop again, right? Because something did terribly go wrong for them. It already has. And so the approach in working with these families, right, is heavily geared towards, things like nervous system regulation, right? When you have experienced trauma or loss and your brain is constantly on high alert, scanning for danger at every little sign, we use somatic tools to help the body recognize, it is safe in the present moment. And, helping them really quiet that fight or flight response that can feel so overwhelming. Although it is like a coping mechanism, it can be, detrimental and overwhelming during like a future pregnancy. So again, the heart of the work, again, is holding space for dual truths, right? Making room for grief and hope at the same time. And just, helping families navigate through that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that's such a like different experience after you've experienced loss. To be pregnant is really scary. I had 3 early miscarriages before I had my daughter. And so it changes the whole pregnancy, and like it can still be like happy and beautiful, but then in the back of your mind there is always this like, what if something happens again? What if I
Yeah.
miss something? And so yeah, it is a different experience. And so I think helping those women is just so important. Like it's invaluable to have someone who can walk you through that. That's not your partner, because your partner is also nervous and scared
Or,
and doesn't exactly know what to say to make things feel better. So I think, yeah, that's just so important.
right. Yeah. Yep. Kind of having someone come alongside the both of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, are there doulas that specifically do just grief and loss?
Yeah. I would say there are, well, doulas or therapists, I guess both. Yeah. So I feel like some doulas train and get specific, training for working with families with grief and loss. Same with therapists. Yeah,
Got it.
for sure. Mhm.
Is there anything else that you think people should know just about the work that you do, or things that, I don't know, people don't talk about enough that you think we should talk about?
Yeah. I would say whatever your journey is and wherever you are, find safe spaces to share that journey. That's not going to be everywhere, right? It's not like go share it everywhere, because not everyone knows how to carry that with you or handle that or even make space for you, right? Not everyone is one trained or even has the capacity or the empathy, right, to do that. But there are people who can. And I would say, don't suffer alone in silence, right? Go find those safe spaces where you can share your story, right? And sharing your story is going to be a huge part of your healing, because once you start sharing it, you start seeing what you are carrying internally, the way you are looking at things internally. And when you can hear it and see it, you can change, the trajectory of the way that you understand something that has happened and therefore help with, healing and finding freedom, whatever it is that you want, right? And a lot of that journey is able to be unfolded by sharing.
Yeah. I think also what's so important is like, as a parent, if you can heal yourself from past trauma or have a really like great birth experience
Yeah.
and be a healed parent, you can raise healed children
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
a whole lot easier. And I think that's something like the newer generations are like, they're realizing like, oh, this is kind of important, and people are
Mhm.
more open to hearing those things now. And so I
Yeah.
think having a doula is a really great way to do that. And also just seeing a therapist in general is a really great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of my clients actually come to me during pregnancy for that reason. They're like, I'm about to have a child. I need to get things together. Like,
Yeah.
I'm about to be responsible for another human life. Like, I need to be able to model the right way to step, into, my future. And, I always think that's so beautiful that, having a child kind of motivates us to do that. But I also always challenge my clients to remember, like, yes, it's beautiful to do it for your child, but do it for yourself. Like, you deserve that. You deserve that apart from anything else. And you are worth it to have a better life.
Yeah. So, in addition to all of the other things that you do, you're also an author. Can you tell us about your book?
Yeah, of course. So I wrote a book called How Eunhye Found Her Light Again. And while it's technically a picture book, right? A children's picture book, most would say, because picture books are usually for kids, it is for everyone. And it is deeply personal to me because it is in many ways my own story. And it is basically a little girl and her journey through having a light, losing her light, and her journey back to that light. And so I kind of used it as a clinical tool, disguised kind of as a bedtime story. And my hope is that by sharing this story through Eunhye, I can give families, a shared language to talk about kind of those darker shadow moments. And it serves kind of just as a gentle reminder that while your light might feel lost or dimmed during a transition or perhaps a hard event or traumatic event, it's never truly gone. And it's a part of you that's just waiting to be rediscovered. And sometimes we just need a safe space and a story to show us that way back. And so, yeah, like I really believe that healing process comes down to the stories we tell ourselves, right? And humans are narratively driven creatures, and we don't just experience life, we try to make sense of it. And I often tell my clients that essentially therapy is a sacred space for storytelling. And it's a place where you can take that messy, fragmented pieces of a difficult experience and slowly put them together in an order that makes sense to you. And when you tell your story to a safe, witness, you aren't just venting, you are in a sense like reclaiming your narrative and deciding that the trauma or that transition doesn't get to be the final word, right? And so, yeah, I'm a huge advocate for using this kind of storytelling. That's basically what I did with my own trauma in writing this story, but also giving it as a tool.
That's amazing. That I can't imagine like being able to write a story like that or make a picture book. And I think that's really amazing. And also that like families can use it. So you can
Mhm.
use it with your kids and adults. And I think
Yeah,
adults forget sometimes like you don't have to read like a huge book about
right.
trauma to heal from trauma.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And trauma itself is so heavy that I wanted it to be kind of like a subtle, gentle
Yeah.
journey where you can kind of take each page and let it speak to you, right? I've had like grandparents read this story with their grandchildren and the grandparents are just in tears thinking about like their own difficult time and what that felt like and how they got out of it and things like that. And so, yes, it is a, heavier book, but it's also meant to be very gentle and digestible for, all the age ranges.
Yeah. Where can people find your book if they want to buy it?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon and on Barnes and Nobles. I saw that like Walmart was selling it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well,
just
neat.
if you just type "How Unha Found Her Light Again," it kind of just pops up in different places.
Awesome. We'll link it in the show notes below. So if anyone wants to buy it, they'll have some links for it. And we'll also link your social media and your website so people can keep up with you.
I think the work you do is really cool, Irene. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
you.
Yeah.
We need more doulas. Everyone needs a doula, and you need to see a therapist, especially if you're having a baby. You
Yep.
need to do it.
I
If I have
agree.
another baby, I will find a doula somewhere.
Good.
Oh,
Good.
God. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode,
Cool.
everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly reset. If you loved hanging out with us today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with a friend who could use a little calm and connection too.
This show is for education and inspiration, not medical advice. To learn more or connect with us, check out the show notes below. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your heart.